Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the meeting tonight. Good evening, everyone. It is now 6:59. Oh, now we just went to 7 o'clock. So it's now 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting? Councillor Stevens, Councillor McIntosh. All those in favor? Very good. Okay, that motion is carried. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none? Okay. So at this time, I do want to just let everyone know the obvious. Mayor Post is off tonight. She has a personal matter. So everyone is stuck with me hosting this meeting. I hear the entire town just gave a collective sigh, but we will all endure and work together to get through the night. So anyway, we wish her all the best. Okay, so for closed meeting, we had no closed meeting tonight. So we'll go right into the open session of our meeting, and we'll begin with singing of the national anthem. I'd ask you to rise if you're able, please. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for that. I wonder if we could get the anthem a little louder next time. That would be great, if we could. At this time, I will do the land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous peoples today. So tonight's meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be saved for later broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *9 to raise their hand to indicate the intention to speak and dial *6 to mute and unmute when called upon during the appropriate portions of the meeting. So at this time, we have no rise and report today. So we'll move right into the adoption of the minutes of the previous council meeting. May I have a mover and a seconder to do that? Councillor Stevens, Councillor Sherwood. Any discussions regarding that? No? Okay, all those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll now move into open forum. Orangeville residents have the opportunity to present their views or pose their questions to council on any subject within council's jurisdiction for a maximum time of 3 minutes, provided they have not previously addressed the same topic before council within the last 3 months. Any residents connecting via telephone are reminded to press *9 to indicate their intention to speak, and once called upon, press *6 to mute and unmute. Madam Clerk, do we have, no? How'd you know what I was going to ask you? Very good. Is there any members of the public here that would like to speak? Please come forward. Mr. Garisto, please state your name and address, if you could. Welcome.
Yes, this is Sonny here. Good evening, everyone. Council members, Deputy Mayor, and members of the public. Anyway, my name is Nick Garisto. I live on 20 Paula Court, L9W5V1. The reason I'm here tonight, I want to ask a question, which, I know it's in progress. Where we're at with Hanson Boulevard? Are we closer to open it up pretty soon, or what is the situation there? Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Very good. Mr. Koslak, did you want to speak to that?
Through your worship, A lot of the utilities were installed last year before the winter came. This summer, they'll be preparing the road and paving the road. We expect it'll probably be open in the fall. An exact timing, we'll know more once the construction's completed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Koslak.
Well, at this time, right?
Mr. Koslak?
No, through your worship, we don't have an exact date. A lot will depend on weather conditions, construction timing. We expect the fall, but we don't have an exact date.
Thank you, Mr. Gristo. Would anyone else like to ask a question from the gallery this evening? Mr. Mayor, please state your name and address. Good to see you, sir.
Likewise, Matthew Mayer, 52nd Street. Just had a couple of quick comments related to the item for the Broadway study. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Worked on it briefly when I was staff, but just had some comments on firstly the recommended parking in there. So I think for both areas, it was recommended just a blanket rate of 1 space per 30 square meters for non-residential floor area. So I just comment that it's not, it's not much of a change from what's currently required in the zoning bylaw. So for instance, like retail, office, et cetera, is 1 space per 20 square meters of floor area. So it's about a 30% reduction. So if you're just looking at those, areas in the east and west Broadway that were part of the corridor study, really dominated by the parking along the frontages and kind of some of the language in the draft document there, and some of the densities that are recommended to build it out, become more urban, et cetera. That kind of 30% reduction in the parking requirement wouldn't, in my opinion, bring about like a dramatic change in the landscape there. Like that landscape is a result of the already high parking requirements. And then if you have, landowners, developers going up to the max of the new permissions of say 6 stories. So you've got, commercial on the main and 5 levels of residential, and even at 1 spot per unit, you could have a requirement for just as much parking, if not more, than what's already there once it's built out. Like it's predominantly 1-story commercial uses there. And the only way to accommodate that would be underground parking if you were trying to get a different kind of streetscape. And as we know from some of the other developments there, the water table is high, which you wouldn't be able to accommodate. So there's just one comment, a bit of a mismatch there just on like the FSI that's recommended and the general parking requirement. Not a criticism of the plan, just an observation. But again, I still think any reduction there is an improvement, and I'm excited about how this is all finalized and when it gets to
Very good.
the land use.
If I could, do you anticipate, like the feedback has been that a lot of those residents that would potentially live there would only have 1 vehicle because they're walking more in that area, the things that they require are down there. You don't share that view?
Do I share the view that the reduction to 1 space per unit for the multifamily would be?
So if I think about the West End would say, hey, we now have 4 cars per household. We used to have 1 or 2, and now we have 4 because we have adult kids. In that area, what they're expecting is there'll be less need for cars because the walkability factor and whatnot. But what you're saying is that you don't, what I'm inferring is you don't agree with that. You think that we're heading for trouble under the current situation.
No, I'm simply stating basically like the kind of the streetscape, the built form language and policies that are, recommended or at least envisioned through the study there
Okay.
would be hard to achieve with just, the the parking reductions that are
Fair enough.
recommended
And
there.
are you just advising us of that, or were you looking for
Well, I would
answer,
say,
or are you're just saying, hey, I'm concerned about this and I want to register it today?
well, I guess in my view, I would say for the non-residential uses, the rate, I would lower it. Like it's about a 30% reduction. One space per 40 square meters would be like slashing it in half, and that would be getting, towards a change in having that lots of surface parking for the commercial. It just doesn't seem like much of a change that's going to result in a dramatically different streetscape. That's all.
Very good. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, appreciate you being here. Good to see you. Anyone else from the gallery like to speak? Mr. Ramsey, we've been worried about you. We haven't seen you for a while. If you could still give your name and address, if you could.
Noel Ramsey. I live on 15 Feed Street.
Welcome.
As you say, I haven't been here for a while, and you're probably breathing a sigh of what I'm up to this evening.
Meetings have been shorter. Meetings have been shorter.
Without me. The reason I'm here tonight is an issue that I've talked about in the past with regards to the safety around the school. There's a matter that's going to be coming before the council this evening with regards to the ODSS parking and stuff like that. And just to make a point, I didn't bring any notes tonight like I normally do, so I'm just kind of going to go down the garden path. My concern is what I see commonly happening in society where people neglect to obey basic rules of the road. I mean, we all become pretty slack. Around the town, around our neighborhood, you'll see people who will just roll through stop signs. They don't use their blinkers. They're going, what they think is a safe speed going around. And with regards to safety around the schools, we all understand why there's a safety zone around the school. And the town employees and the council and the citizens, teachers, and the school boards, they've invested so much time and money and resources in trying to keep this area safe. I think I counted at one point, there's over 30 signs that the town has put up in a 2-block radius just of ODSS. So that's a lot of money and effort that went into the planning of that. And this report that's coming out, I'm sure that a lot of time and resources and money went into researching it, coming up with recommendations. Your valuable time is put into it as well. And from my point, what really kind of bothers me is when I see all these events happening where people are just ignoring the rules of the road. I've sent a number of photos to council as well as to bylaw enforcement where you can actually see people who are parking, not stopping, but parking in a no stopping zone right underneath the signs. As a matter of fact, I think I've sent in a couple dozen pictures over the last few years, and almost all of them are people parking right under those signs. And for the life of me, when you go forward and you get a driver's license, they test you for your skill in controlling the vehicle, your knowledge of the road, and your ability to control the vehicle. And part of that is you have to know the rules of the road. So when I see reports come out, and these reports have come out, and also feedback from council has been consistent with what this report is going to say is, we're trying to educate the public. I still can't understand why collectively we think it's an education issue. We have a license, you've passed the test, you're expected to know the rules, you're parking underneath the signs.
So thank you very much for that. I get the general gist of it.
Could I just close with one comment? I'm not asking you, I'm not telling you what to do or saying what you should do. My only request, my only question is, could you please consider putting the onus back on the drivers? It's their responsibility to determine where they're going to pick their child up, how long it takes time it takes to pick their child up. It's not the council's responsibility. It's not the citizens of the town responsibility.
Yeah.
They're breaking rules that you have spent your time and effort to set. And basically, they're giving you the finger is what they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. I appreciate that. I don't mean to rush you. I get your point, and it's not just in front of ODSS. Quick story, we have issues in the West End in front of Spencer Avenue Public School. People are parking there, they're dropping their kids off. It's on a side street. They're blocking driveways for other residents. What would you do if you were a resident and your driveway was being blocked on a daily basis? Make you pretty upset. The town went in, we enforced it with bylaw. Bylaw was treated very poorly. Police were involved. And then we eliminated parking spots in that area, which caused an uprising. But it just continues. So I think what would be great is if we could all treat each other with a little bit of respect, as what you're suggesting, and if we would follow the rules, that it would be a better place. But unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen. You know that, I know that, and the town will be there to enforce it to the best of their ability. And I know that you're going to say that it's not that good. Well, resources will dictate what we can do. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Any other comments from the gallery tonight? Does he have one? Let somebody else go first. Yeah. Is there, Mr. Gristo, before you go, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Could you just wait to the end, Mr. Gristo? You've already had a turn. Thank you. Mr. Gristo, you've had your 3 minutes. You are not in the queue. Mr. Gristo. Please sit down. We will not acknowledge you. You've had your turn. It's a public meeting, and we all take our... Mr. Gristo.
And you're telling me I don't have the right to ask another question.
You have a right to ask another question, but you will stay in the queue, and you will be respectful of the other residents that are here. Okay, is there anybody else in the gallery that would like to speak? Yes, please come forward. Welcome. Please say your name and address for us, please.
Michelle Hartley, Morgandale Crescent, and I did not intend to speak. Although driving here quickly, I passed some wonderful businesses, some people that I know, and I wave. All I want to do is say, I love Orangeville. I know we're getting to election time, and some people are advocating for their candidate. They're not their candidate, using Facebook appropriately, inappropriately. And damn it, we have a great town. And with everything that's happening in this world, south of the border, why can't we just get along? Someone just said that. I want to talk about some awesome services that Orangeville provides. I work frontline, supporting adults with special needs, and it's not a high-paying job, so I really have to budget. We have the free walking track. It costs $1.50 for the people to use the inclusive walking gym. We have great staff. The lifeguards of the pool are amazing. I'm going to tell you guys a story. That's what I do. I went public swimming a couple weeks ago with people with special needs, and the song Sweet Caroline came on, and everybody was excited. The pool was packed, a lot of seniors. I was in the shallow area, and the guy was dancing, and I just said, everybody, Sweet Caroline, bum, bum, bum. That's Orangeville. I'm getting angry, so if you see me posting at night, I popped some meds, I took a drink, and I did my typing, but I own it. Damn it, we live in a great town, and let's just stop the bitching and the complaining, and there's no garbage can at a shelter for the bus. We don't need garbage cans at the shelters. That's more for the town to pick up. It's more for raccoons and cats to get in, and I like to hear myself talk just as much as some other people. Let's talk nice. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, Ms. Hartley. Appreciate that. Anyone else further in the gallery? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Sure. There's actually two of us here.
So if you could state your name and address.
Peter Bruce, 157 Parkview Drive, also branch manager at Burnside Engineering at 15 Town Line, which is within the Broadway revitalization project. So I want to introduce Mark Crapez, who's an architect that we're working with on the area, and just Mark wanted to speak to some of the items on the Broadway East project.
Sure.
Good afternoon, good evening. I represent, and so does Peter, probably about 10 landowners, Town Line, Broadway, East and West, directly affected by the study. We've been working with Jill Richards as well and town staff. But on seeing the report, wanted to just say a few things. I think there's some missed opportunities on the landmark node that is supposed to be happening on East Broadway. It's in the report that you'll see at Town Line and Broadway. It's supposed to be a possible 10-story landmark area. I think this whole section of Town Line and Broadway South, Town Line South could be a landmark that you would see from Highway 10 and 9 as you approach the town. I've got a couple of reasons, 3 reasons about that particular East Broadway area. My first reason is oversimplified. The town is not likely to attract a major commercial sector employer that would need office space in that commercial node if it's just a 6-story density. The second is a major employer with office needs doesn't usually want to have a mixed use. The third reason is that the study and the OP implementation may be already too late for that node. As you might know, they're reconstructing KFC. You've got the Shoppers Drug Mart, you've got the LCBO. They're not likely to be demolishing those buildings in the next 10 or 20 years. So I think there's an opportunity to take that landmark node and move it all the way down Town Line. There's some missed opportunities on the density. If it is, the study is generally in line with all municipalities in terms of density and building height. I did not see any mention of transit-oriented maximum density along Broadway because I think that if you look at 5 to 10 years out, we have to kind of look at this study 100 years out. What will mass transit look like? Do we need 4 lanes? Do we need 5 lanes? As you might see in some other areas. The other thing is we did propose to the consultants a 6-story mixed commercial residential area.
So if I may, we're not going to get through what you have to say. I'm just curious, Peter, why didn't you delegate tonight? What was the thought process?
I got basically out of time and basically found out about the meeting on Friday and had actually a presentation ready for council.
Okay.
But since we weren't informed until Thursday, we had a deadline, we couldn't do it.
Okay, well, it's been advertised, there's been public meetings, whatnot.
True.
So
True.
why don't you see if you can get in with the clerk and find a time to come back and share your story in detail?
Sure. Okay.
Okay? Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Okay, is anybody else in the gallery this evening like to, yes? Rick, are you coming forward? Okay. Could you state your name and address for us?
Yep. Matthew Smith, McCarthy Street, Orangeville. I have 2 questions regarding the latest transit report in regards
So,
to
Mr. Smith, you have delegated on this previously, right?
Yes, not on the report. I did email Mayor Post about it, and she did say as long as I stick to the report, I'm able to speak tonight.
Okay.
So is that okay? Can I speak?
Let's be respectful, though, if you could.
Okay. Yeah, I just have 2 questions regarding the ridership numbers for
Sure.
within the report. I'd just like to know if they are available month to month, like, January, February, March, if all those 12 months for 2025 are available, as well as the average, ridership per trip, like are the buses at full capacity, half, 10% capacity? Because that might factor into future bus purchases. Maybe we don't need to spend 1.3 million on new buses when we could get, say, something smaller that's built off like a Ford F-550 frame for, say, $400,000. And it can fit 24, 18 people, something like that. So save the town a couple dollars that way.
Right. I think there's a whole history to this. Mr. Koselak, did you want to talk to this at all?
Sure, through you, Your Worship. We'll check and see if we have the monthly data. I guess in the future, if any residents have a question, they can reach out and we can provide information, but we'll check and see if we have that. And I guess with the buses, we did try and procure some 30-foot buses. I guess it was 2024. We had purchased 2 buses. They were about the 400,000 mark the resident mentioned. That company went bankrupt. At the time, they were the only bidder for it. The town didn't lose any money on it. We hadn't given a deposit or anything. We then joined with Metrolinx on their joint procurement. They had gone out for buses, including 30-foot buses and 40-foot. There were no bidders on the 30-foot buses. That's part of that also. So there's very limited production on the 30-foot, and that's one of the things with the 40-foot buses. They're a solider bus. They have a heavy-duty frame. They'll handle more mileage. I don't think we have the details exactly how many people are on the bus at all times. I know at our peaks, it's standing room only on some of the buses. So we don't have counters on our buses, but that'll be something we'll look at as part of the new ones. But we can see about the monthly ridership.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Koselak.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Mr. Ugolini, welcome.
Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff. Boy, this...
Could you just state your, just to be formal, can you tell us your usual?
Cedar Drive, Orangeville.
Very good.
This just happened to fall in my lap. Thank you, Matthew. I did some research today, and I just want you folks to know that New Flyer has come out with a 35-foot bus. It talks about saving fuel, saving money on the purchase of it. Now, I don't know if it's too late, but that might be a good idea to get hold of New Flyer and see if you can switch the order from a 40-footer to a 35-footer. I have information right here if anybody wants to see it. Capacity is, I think, 32 plus 2 wheelchair spots on the 35-foot bus. So it'd be a smaller turning radius, better on fuel, and cheaper. I just want you folks to know that it is available now.
Very good. Thank you for that. If you want to just leave that information with the clerk. Mr. Koselak, you wanted to speak to that?
Yeah,
Sure.
through your worship. The 35-foot bus New Flyer makes is the same as the 40-foot. They just chop off 5 feet at the back. Talking to New Flyer, when we purchased the buses, it was the exact same price whether you wanted a 35 or 40-foot. So I think saying there's a savings, I don't think that's correct. There wasn't much of a change in the turning radius, and the seating capacity was less on the 35, including the accessible. So that was part of the concerns when we looked at that also.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Giuliani. Is there anyone else in the gallery who'd like to speak? Yes, please come forward. From the back row, welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Mason Schmidt, 8 McMaster Road. I didn't plan on asking a question tonight, but I was skimming through the Broadway East-West Corridor report. In the corporate implications section, it does say that expected costs for these improvements to be in the range of $16.7 to $20.7 million. It does state a couple different sources for these funding costs about development charges and other areas. I was wondering if there's any information. I know the report is in early stages about how much of this cost is going to be burdened on the taxpayers and how the town plans to manage that, or just what information is available right now.
Very good. Mr. Koselak?
Yeah, through your worship, this is a very preliminary report. We'll go through a more detailed design and an environmental assessment we do. We'll look at the roads. A lot of it probably won't be done for, I'd guess, another 10 years. We're looking at replacing the sewer and water main on Broadway probably in about 10 years. At that time, you'll be excavating most of the road to replace the sewer and water. At that time, you'd put back what's there. So I think there's a lot of factors in play to look at how the costing would be. I think if you do it combined with the water and sewer, the cost would be totally different as a standalone project. But I think it's way too early to give any true accurate estimates on how the cost would be.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Koslak.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other further commentary tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to 12.1, which is public delegations. We have no public delegations tonight, so 12.2 is the staff consultant presentations on the east-west Broadway corridor. So at this time, I guess I would like to introduce and welcome Allison Buckling and Robert Voigt from JL Richards and Associates Limited. Welcome, Allison and Robert. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. Good evening. My name is Allison Bucking, and here with me today is Robert Voigt. We are planners from JL Richards and Associates Limited. We have been retained by the town to assist with the East and West Broadway corridor study, and we're excited to be here tonight to present the draft vision and land use framework for these areas. Next slide, please. So in terms of our presentation today, the draft vision and land use framework covers several different topic areas. For the purpose of the meeting, we're going to focus on the land use and built form recommendations and the public realm improvements as it relates to the streetscape. So in terms of agenda, we're going to quickly go over the background since it's been a little while since we presented to council. We'll go over the vision for both study areas, the recommended land use and built form framework, the streetscape recommendations, and then finish it off with implementation and next steps. Next slide, please. So starting off with background. Next slide, please. So in terms of the study area, they're on the shoulders of the downtown. So the East Broadway focus area generally consists of the properties that front onto Broadway between 3rd Street and Highway 10, whereas the West Broadway focus area generally consists of the properties which front onto Broadway between Blind Line and Claris Street/Center Street. Next slide, please. So in terms of purpose and scope, the purpose of this project was to evaluate the sections of Broadway to the east and west of the downtown and establish a vision, land use, and public realm plan which accommodates growth, helps facilitate the creation of a vibrant and sustainable corridor, and creates a unique character. So the project was split up into 3 phases, and our presentation today represents the culmination of phase 2. If the report is adopted today, we'll then proceed to phase 3, which is the implementation stage, where we'll draft the recommended changes to the official plan and zoning bylaw and draft the design guidelines and streetscape plans. Next slide, please. In terms of engagement for this study, to gather feedback on what we should do for the East and West Broadway focus areas in terms of built form, the streetscape, and land use recommendations. We held a survey, we held 3 focus groups, and an open house. So on the slide here, you can see images from the open house where we asked questions on streetscape, cross-section options, some proposed building heights, and examples of improvements along different corridors. Some common themes that we heard were wanting to see improved safety along the roads, wanting the roads to accommodate a greater variety of transportation options, things like walking and cycling, wanting an improved feel of that street, and also a need that we want to avoid creating these walls of 10-story buildings. They were okay with the building heights, but we just want to make sure that the massing is not superimposing. Next slide, please. So next we'll move on to vision. So in terms of the structure for this document, it consists of first the vision, what we want these areas to look like, and how we want them to grow. Then it has private realm considerations, so land use recommendations in relation to permitted uses, building heights, setbacks, urban design recommendations, and then public realm considerations, so the infrastructure that's needed to support this type of growth, and the streetscape improvements. It really recognizes that to achieve this vision for these focus areas, you need both private sector and public sector cooperation. Next slide, please. So in terms of vision for these study areas, they each have a very different role in the town and therefore necessitate a different vision. So for context, as you may be aware, East Broadway plays an important role as a gateway. It plays an important role bringing people into the town from Highway 10. Whereas West Broadway is primarily residential, but it has access to a lot of services and amenities like the transit hub, like the multi-use trail, and different services, things like Fresco, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So in terms of vision for the East Broadway study area, just in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the vision that's shown on this slide, but I'm going to highlight some key points that are stated in this vision. The first being that this vision wants to capitalize on this area's role as a gateway into the town and capitalize on how to make this corridor more vibrant and accommodate a greater variety of transportation options like walking and cycling. So to achieve this vision, there's several objectives that are listed on this screen. So looking at ways that through built form and design, we can reinforce its role as a gateway, how we can increase the variety and mix of land uses, as right now it's very auto-centric, ways to incorporate different streetscaping measures like landscaping to improve the feel, how we can activate the street by locating buildings closer and having parking located behind the buildings, providing a more seamless transition into the downtown, and creating that unique character. Next slide, please. So for West Broadway, the vision here focuses on how we can create a pedestrian-scaled corridor, which leads people from the excitement of downtown to a place that feels like home. So really capitalizing on creating a very pedestrian-scaled and vibrant neighborhood. So in terms of objectives, wanting to achieve a more low to mid-rise built form for these areas, leverage and build on the open space and trail connections that are existing and are planned for this area, how to incorporate different streetscaping measures to improve the feel of the street, activate the street, and also expand on the public art that's already in this area. A really unique thing for these study areas is that the downtown, the East Broadway, and the West Broadway corridor study areas are all connected by those really unique wooden sculptures. So how can we continue to build on that and connect these areas? And also providing opportunities to communicate local priorities through design. Next slide, please. So next we're going to cover the land use and built form framework. So for East Broadway, the general land use goal is to provide policies and regulations which enable the development of a mid-rise mixed-use built form with street activating uses at grade. So we are recommending for land use designations that the areas which front onto Broadway, which are shown in orange, be designated mixed use, and the areas which are shown as green be designated open space / floodplain to recognize that they are hazard areas that should not be developed. And then the areas within 200 meters of the wastewater treatment plant be designated commercial. And the reason why we state commercial for those areas is just in line with provincial recommendations for setbacks between sensitive land uses like residential and wastewater treatment plants. So as it relates to non-residential uses at grade, so while the designations here are mixed use, we're not requiring that every building in this area be mixed use and have non-residential uses or commercial at grade. Rather, we are stating that in specific areas, we will require these non-residential uses. And the reason for that is fairly simple. We can't require it everywhere as there is not enough demand. And vacant storefronts are a greater hindrance to the creation of a vibrant streetscape than residential uses at grade would be. And further, it would take away from the success of the downtown by spreading out these commercial uses. So that's why we want to be strategic on where we're requiring it. So you could see on the circled areas on this image here, those are the areas where we'd be requiring mixed use at grade. Then elsewhere, we'd be requiring active uses at grade. So things like lobbies, gyms, party rooms, uses that are still exciting. So as a pedestrian, you can see things going on and you enjoy walking, but they're not commercial. And one thing that I didn't highlight here, actually no, it's on the next slide, so never mind, next slide. So in terms of recommended building heights, so the areas in orange, we're recommending a minimum of 3 stories and a maximum of 8 stories. The area in pink, we're recommending a minimum building height of 2 stories and a maximum of 6 stories. And the circle area is an area where initial maximum height of 10 stories may be considered, provided that it has an enhanced architectural treatment to reinforce its role as a gateway and public art. So the reason why we require minimum building heights is really to create that sense of enclosure and that consistent street wall. So when you have a greater variety of blank spaces, it's just not as comfortable as a pedestrian. It also helps to achieve the intensification target, which has increased through Dufferin County's official plan. In terms of maximum building heights, how we established those is that we looked at what's been already proposed in these areas and directions for other similar sized municipalities. What are they looking for in terms of building heights for these types of areas? And we also used a best practice, which is to base the mid-rise building heights on the width of the right-of-way. So Broadway has a 30-meter right-of-way, so that kind of correlates to about an 8 to 9-story building height. This recommendation helps to define a human scale and considers sun and shadow impacts. As it relates to density, we're proposing to move away from the traditional units per hectare approach that's been applied in the town. And the reason for that is that metric is highly variable, and it actually doesn't control the built form. So we're proposing to use something called the floor space index. So a floor space index is basically the gross building area divided by the site area. And you can see on this slide here how an FSI of 1 can achieve different built forms. So we're recommending an FSI of 4 for the mixed-use areas here. And again, this would help with not creating those walls of 10-story buildings, but then helps to control massing. Next slide, please. So in terms of setbacks, we're recommending that we're reducing the setbacks for this area. So a minimum front yard setback of 3 meters and a maximum of 5 for the front yard, and then recommending a step back. So that's where the building steps back from the lower portion of the building of 1.5 to 3 meters above the 6-story. For the side yard, recommending a 2.5 meter setback as a minimum, and then a 3 meter setback above the 6-story. For the rear yard, it'd be a 7.5 meter setback and a 2.5 meter step back, above the 6-story, unless a greater setback of 10 meters is provided. So on this slide here, you can see a conceptual rendering of a 8-story building along Broadway. You can see that by having a maximum front yard setback, we help to create that sense of enclosure and have more eyes on the street. And then that upper note there showing that how we determine building step backs is using 80% of the right-of-way. And again, that helps with a sun-shadow perspective. Next slide, please. So again, this slide is showing that conceptual massing and showing how through different architectural treatments like step backs and setbacks and FSI, you can achieve a very pedestrian-scaled building that isn't a giant cube and creates variety. And you can also see that this building height, you're never going to occupy the entire frontage. You're always going to need access for parking. You're going to need those side yard spaces for amenity areas, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So this slide here is a little confusing, but basically, the buildable areas are shown in light gray. So that's your maximum building envelope. That is not what the building will look like, but rather this is the sandbox in which you can play in. And the white buildings represent existing buildings in the area. So on the left-hand side here, this is showing the intersection of Town Line and Sherbourne with Broadway, and showing how that 10-story building height that could be achieved at that intersection is not as imposing because there's a grade change as you go up to the downtown. And a similar approach, it's the opposite way on the right-hand side here. Next slide, please. So this slide is illustrating some approved developments in this area and how they don't occupy those full building envelopes, showing how you'll need that space for parking and access. And that's why they will not occupy the full building envelope. Next slide. This slide just shows some conceptual building footprints of both the East and West Broadway area, should it develop into our vision. Next slide, please. So in terms of parking recommendations, we know that parking is a strong influence in the cost of the development and also is a consideration that can hinder the ability to support urbanization, walkability, and access. So we're recommending that we reduce the parking requirement for mixed-use and apartment buildings to 1 parking space per unit plus 0.25 visitor spaces and or 1 parking space per 30 meters squared of non-residential space. What that means is that that visitor and commercial office rate is shared. And this rate has been used in Stratford, Grand Valley, and Brantford. Some other considerations from the study include applying a holding symbol to all properties within the East Broadway study area, as we know that there's going to need to be upgrades from a water servicing perspective, ensuring that these developments do not proceed until there's confirmation of sufficient servicing capacity to support these developments. We're also recommending a minimum requirement for amenity area and a maximum building width size of 60 meters to again help control the massing. Next slide, please. So for West Broadway, the general land use goal here is to provide policies and regulations to enable the development of a medium-density walkable neighborhood. So as you can see on the slide, on the west side of Dawson, the recommended land uses are residential. On the east side, it is mixed use. And similar to West Broadway, only requiring non-residential uses at grade at specific intersections, such as Center and Clara and Dawson. Next slide, please. So in terms of building heights, the heights for this West Broadway corridor study area will be lesser than that of East Broadway. And again, that recognizes that there's an existing established neighborhood to the north of the study area. So we're recommending on the south side that they are higher building heights, and that's just due to the fact that there's not an established residential neighborhood. It backs onto the creek, so there's going to need to be a little bit more setbacks to that feature, and there's more space between buildings on the properties. So recommending a minimum building height of 2 stories and a maximum of 6 stories, shown on that purple area, and a minimum building height of 2 stories and a max of 4 stories on the north side. And that star on the slide represents an area where increased building height may be considered to create a gateway feature, but it wouldn't be greater than 1 to 2 stories above the existing maximum for that area. So in terms of density, we're also recommending for this study area that we move away from the units per hectare density calculation and move towards the floor space index. So on the north side, recommending a maximum of 2, and on the south side, recommending a maximum of 3. Next slide, please. So this slide just generally shows the height transition, moving from a maximum of 6 stories to 4 stories on the north side. Next slide. So in terms of setbacks, it's actually in line with the recommendations for the East study area, so I won't go over that again. And the parking has a similar recommendation, but we are recommending that new standards be developed for different types of townhouses, as a street townhouse that has 3 bedrooms is different than a stacked townhouse that may have 1 or 2, and therefore necessitates a different parking requirement. And in terms of other considerations, we're encouraging that buildings on that south side of Broadway provide connections into that future multi-use trail so that residents don't have to go around to access those trailheads, increasing connectivity. And then we're also recommending the other recommendations that the East Broadway corridor study recommended, which is the holding symbol, the minimum amenity area requirement, and the maximum building width. Next slide, please. So that was a lot, but we'll move on to the next part. So in terms of the public realm. So for East Broadway, we are recommending that we reduce the 4 lanes for vehicular traffic to 2 lanes of travel with 1 turning lane and 1 lane of on-street parking. And you may be wondering, well, we have a traffic issue when we approach the East Broadway into the downtown right now. Why are you recommending that we're reducing the number of lanes? Well, what's happening right now is that when you leave Highway 10, you're entering at a higher speed, and you enter that 4-lane road, and then when you get to the downtown, it tapers down and it creates a bottleneck. And so you're having vehicles merge into those lanes, which are actually slowing it down. So this recommendation will help to improve that flow and also slow traffic as you're exiting off of that Highway 10. We're also recommending introducing a median to restrict areas where turning left is not recommended. We're proposing to widen the pedestrian sidewalk on the north side of Broadway. We're proposing to keep the curb locations on the south side of Broadway, and that's just from an infrastructure and cost perspective. We've already seen improvements to those areas, and actually reduce costs as you don't have to move the infrastructure in those locations. We're also recommending a larger planting and furnishing zone, and that's just to create a better buffer from the sidewalk to the street. And the whole, I guess, methodology or message behind this approach is that we want to treat Broadway as a destination, not a thoroughfare. Next slide, please. So for West Broadway, there's actually 2 cross-sections that we're recommending, and that's because there's 2 different treatments in that area. There's that area between, well, starting at around Blind Line, where we have that window street. So similar to East Broadway, we're recommending that we reduce those 4 lanes down to 2 with 1 lane for turning, introducing a median in areas where left turns should be restricted, widening the pedestrian sidewalk to 2 meters on the south side, and adding a 3-meter multi-use trail along the north side of Broadway. And that's to connect into the existing multi-use trail and also to increase those alternative transportation options and connectivity to that transit hub. Next slide, please. So for this alternative West Broadway cross-section, you could see here that when the window street is not there, we're actually recommending that the 3-meter multi-use trail stays, but also introducing a planting zone and a sidewalk. And so that's to allow for that multi-use trail to be used more for cyclists, runners maybe, and allowing that sidewalk to use more for walkers. So similar approaches, again, for both cross-sections. Next slide, please. So in terms of implementation and next steps. So in summary, we covered quite a lot of information tonight, but we'll end with saying that realizing the vision for both study areas requires both municipal and private sector investment. So in terms of land use, we're providing a framework that prioritizes changes that can create an active and vibrant streetscape and support mid-rise development. In terms of the streetscape, that proposed lane reduction is expected to have a minimal impact on the transportation network, with any effects to be mitigated through transportation demand measures, improved pedestrian connections, and the town's free transit service. In terms of infrastructure, we know there's going to need to be upgrades to support growth, with some of those efforts underway, like water, while some will require future budgeting. Next slide, please. So if this report is adopted at the meeting today, we'll then proceed to phase 3, which will be drafting the recommended changes to the official plan and zoning bylaw and preparing the urban design guidelines. Next slide, please. Thank you. I know that was a lot of information to cover, so I'm happy to answer any questions or to go back on any of the slides if you have any comments on those. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Bucking and Mr. Voigt. Excellent. Appreciate you being here. If you could just get comfortable for a minute, we're going to do some administration and we will come back to you for questions in a second. So at this time, what we'd like to do is we'll go into the staff report as well. But before we do, what I'm going to do is ask that we have a motion, a mover and a seconder, and I'll just read the report. We'll do that. And then we'll come in and everybody can ask questions, okay? So I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder for the following motion, that report INS 2026022 East and West Broadway Corridor Planning Study, Phase 2 Vision Report be received, and that the Vision and Land Use Framework Report dated March 2026, included as attachment number 1 to this report, be approved, and that staff proceed to implement the recommendations of the Phase 2 report through future development approvals and initiating updates to the town's design guidelines, official plan, and zoning bylaw as appropriate, and that any future capital projects for Broadway within the study areas incorporate the recommendations of the Phase 2 report where appropriate. So, to council, to get this onto the floor for discussion, could I have a mover? Councillor Andrews? Councillor McIntosh? All in favor of doing that? Great, okay. Sorry, I should not have asked for the all in favor. We're just going to debate this at this time, so anyway, if we could, I will turn it over to councillors here for questions, and Councillor Sherwood, you are up first. This is my first chance to use this, so we'll see. Are you in? Are you on? Are we going to get in here?
Oh, thank you.
There we
Thank you,
go.
Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm wondering if you can put the slide up again for West Broadway study area. I'm mostly concerned on the Broadway West, where there's the green boxes are showing up on the north side of Broadway, and I'm wondering, is that indicating all the heritage properties that are along there? My concern with the West Broadway is there's a few heritage homes all along that area that fall out of the downtown heritage district. You never know, maybe sometime many, many years from now, they may extend the downtown heritage district. But in the meantime, I'm a little worried about activity happening around those heritage properties and, these big buildings going up beside them. So has that been taken into consideration about that? Even though there's not properties along there designated, they sit on the non-registry, and I just worry about modernization being able to be reflective of the heritage that's in that particular area.
Ms. Bucking?
Through you, Your Worship, that's a great question. And one of the recommendations in the study area is to encourage the adaptive reuse of some of those existing heritage buildings on the north side of Broadway and the West Broadway study area. And in addition, we'll also, through our urban design guidelines, be recommending some transition guidelines in terms of building, built form, massing, and also design treatments.
So just to answer my question, what are those green boxes on your study?
So those green boxes are just showing general building envelopes. They're not really intended to show that these areas will be redeveloped. I think they were really intended to show more what building envelopes could look like, but it wasn't intended to show that this area would be demolished and then redeveloped with these 4-story buildings. So I apologize, that's not a great figure, and I can understand why you'd be a bit concerned there.
Okay, yeah, because I know there is a mix in there of non-heritage and heritage. So just would like to be really mindful of that. That's that one area that I'm kind of more concerned about as to how it develops, because I certainly don't think that 10 stories, and I believe your report said on the west, the highest would be 6 stories, or highest would be 4?
Highest in the west would be 6 stories on the south side.
On the south side?
Yes, on the south side. And then there's an opportunity for an increased building height of probably about 6 to 7 on the, or 7 to 8, sorry, on kind of where you see D3 shown on this slide.
Oh, I don't like the looks of that. Okay, all right, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Stevens. Oh, did you want to go ahead? Okay, please.
Through the chair. So as we develop the urban design guidelines, we can address that aspect of the character from the heritage buildings that you've noted. But we're not able to, let's say, supersede what is regulated under the Heritage Act, right? So we can't come up with new rules that create a protection that doesn't already exist. I will note that, and the fact that those buildings are there now, and respecting the fact that, of course, things change, but the heritage buildings that you have now, even the ones that are protected in the downtown, are there because they were loved and because they were valuable to the owners of the time. Most heritage buildings that exist now are because they had purpose and that they were able to be used, not because there was any kind of regulation to protect them, right? So we have to remember that. So in this context, as long as that corridor is an appealing place and working with staff and they understand where those limits might be in terms of zoning and trying to direct where that growth primarily goes, hopefully that value still is there. And the design guidelines, which again are only guidelines, the province has changed the ability to, I won't say dictate, but really have a strong hand in the look of buildings, talking about materiality and things of form. So these guidelines will have to be very encouraging in nature, and the municipality can support that encouragement by your investment in the public realm, right? So that quality and that comes out there. So there's ways that we can do our best to address that. I just wanted to clear that there's very little we can do in terms of a protective restricting of what happens. But it's, I think it's worthwhile that you noted that, so thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Voigt. Councillor Sherwood, are you good? Okay. Councillor Stevens, you are on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a couple areas. One is the going from 4 lanes down to 2 and with a turn lane and a multi-use. I live at the West End. It takes 20 minutes to get from one side of town to the other, and I think reducing lanes is really gonna impact that, especially with more population. You know, I just see the traffic increasing, not decreasing, and now you're taking lanes away. So that's one. And I don't know if we've done a traffic study in that areas. I'm just afraid that we're gonna put more traffic on Amelia, Blind Line, Town Line to get around. And I don't know if that's fair to those residents that live in those areas. So if you could make some comments on that, that'd be great.
Mr. Voigt or Ms. Bucking?
Through the chair. So I'll answer in reverse. So that work to really analyze that will be happening in the future. I think your staff mentioned the EA process that covers that. Not to be flippant, but that distance where we're reducing the travel distance there, the impact there is actually going to be quite minimal. So your overall travel distance that you said you experience, that is a small portion of it, and we're probably only talking a minute or so of that time in there. So that is part of that reality. The second thing is when we redesign those streets, and by we, it's a broader team and it's done by engineers. The thing that slows down traffic is the way intersections work, right? So by controlling some of the movements on the turning and that gets the traffic out of the way, right? And we know that, we experience that. That's where things clog up. Also, by slowing it down, it becomes a safer environment, and there is a sweet spot there where slower traffic at a more consistent speed actually gets you faster throughput. And we know that in places where we might be frustrated and there's a stop sign or many stops and you zoom towards them and you act like a human driving, you go fast, you stop, you go fast, you stop. A consistent speed allows a better throughput of traffic volume, and it also makes it safer and it makes it easier for pedestrians to get out of your way faster. So there's a whole bunch of dynamics there, but that will come out through the EA process. And the reality is, I think it's fair to say it will change that experience. There is no way to design your way around that and have an increase of density and a more urban environment and a larger downtown and have everything still be the same. That can't happen. There's no way to engineer around that, unfortunately.
Very good. Mr. Koslak, did you want to talk to the traffic study portion? And if I could just add some further commentary, that issue that was just brought forward by Councillor Stevens was actually touched on by our resident Noel Ramsey earlier tonight, and just the frustrations of that. So anyway, what would you think, Mr. Koslak?
Yeah, through your worship, we'll do a more detailed review when we do the environmental assessment for it. Typically, you don't see 4-lane roads like this. Typically, it's done as a 3-lane or a 5-lane where you have a center turning lane. And a lot of the 4-lane section on Broadway, those inner lanes function as left turn lanes. So if you're coming from Highway 10, it's the people turning into Tim Hortons, it's the people turning in everywhere. If you have one combined left turn lane, it'll make the flow go better. As the consultant said, people aren't cutting in and out and trying to merge. If you do have it in one lane and just have the center turn lane, you do get pretty good flow. I don't think we'd notice a big difference in the throughput on the road. Even on the west end, if you look at that, we could have a dedicated left turn lane that would go into Diane Drive, a dedicated through lane, and a lot of it functions almost like that now, but we have that 4-lane cross section. And that's why you do get some people crossing quickly on lanes and cutting off people when they do have lane changes. If we can design it with one good through lane, one long left turn lane taper, it does separate the traffic earlier, they merge earlier. I think it'll function well, but we'll do the more detailed design through the environmental assessment.
Very good. Councillor Stevens, are you good?
Just looking forward to that study, because right now you're not going to convince me, so.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Koselleck, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but just as a thought, the amount of traffic that goes through there in that section on a sort of a daily or weekly basis, it is significant, hundreds of thousands of cars. Do you recall what that amount was and what we're talking about? And if it's, I don't mean to put you there, but it's interesting.
Yeah, through your worship, I thought when we did traffic counts, when we did the repaving, it was about 20,000 cars a day that go through the section near Town Hall. And it'd probably be fairly consistent for all of Broadway.
A day.
Yeah, it's one of our higher volume roads. I guess the way Orangeville was designed historically, we don't have a lot of straight roads. It's a lot of curvy roads, so it's one of the few throughput roads, just like Hanson. That's the main collectors for people going through town.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So this contraption that I'm using tonight to allow people to speak, it says that Deputy Mayor Taylor would like to speak, and I was certain that I'd done something wrong. But I now know that Councillor Andrews is sitting in Deputy Mayor Taylor's seat. So, yes, so Councillor Andrews, you are up.
My goodness, I ended up having my finger probably on the button first. That means I'm going to talk the most. No. Ms. Bucking and Mr. Voigt, through you, Deputy Mayor Taylor, thank you for being here and thank you for your vision exercise. Again, one of my files is economic development. We did go through that focus group discussion. And again, Councillor Stevens, thank you for asking the same question that's on my list here. And again, I think what's important, that West Broadway area that has been spoken about is one that I am, from a vision perspective, with the visuals that you've highlighted several times, even back in 2025, I'm all in for it, but logistically, I think that we're really looking at, obviously, some information that's going to come from our transportation side to validate the consideration of this. And again, I know that this is a long-term vision, and I think for the general public that happens to be in attendance and for those that are watching, what we have is a long-term vision for this community that is going to change the way this community is looking. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's, again, for another comment. So again, the transportation piece has been spoken about, but I do tend to disagree with Mr. Voigt on people are creatures of habit, and that happens to be a congested area. And for those of us who've lived in this community a long time, we've seen that. One of the questions I do have is, in fact, it was kind of posed by a member of our community who was during the delegation, or at least the open forum. And I'll just read from page 54 and 55 in the council agenda and corporate implications. So estimates potential costs for these improvements in the range of $16.7 to $20.7 million in 2025 dollars. Ways to include this, as we know, DCs, local improvement charges, public-private partnerships, which is absolutely critical. One of the things that this council has been very, very good at is, in fact, advocating for support from different levels of government, and especially the higher or the upper levels of government. And I think that this would be an opportunity for us. The other, of course, is to take a look at our own source resources or revenues, such as taxes, which, again, I'm not going to get into that. But one thing that caught my eye was CBCs, which is, in fact, the term community benefit charges. And is there an example that you have in your toolbox that you might be able to share? Because again, this is something that is, again, different than many other communities have dealt with. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Mr. Voigt? Ms. Bucking, or?
Yes, through the chair. So the packages that we've provided there in terms of the options, and again, it comes down to that combination of what you're trying to fund, because then there's certain mechanisms that you can and can't use. And it's also for looking at for the improvements for all the services that would be related to the residents that are there, right? So a lot of that discussion, I can't give you a clear do this, do that, because it does come down to where you decide in the end, where you land with your zoning based on your OP changes and the kinds of changes that are required based on your EA studies and that. So we can come back to council with some, through staff with some examples or other further information if that's something that council would like to move and then ask us to bring back, that's fine. And then we can figure out with staff how to scope what that discussion actually is. But I can't give you a flat, use this to fund this one portion, because I'm afraid more for the audience that's watching, having sat on your sides of the table, if I declare that something can be paid a certain way as a could be, it will come back unfortunately to council as you said it would be. And I'd rather give you advice that is still open that way. Sorry, that doesn't directly answer the question.
No, Mr. Voigt, it does provide some context to the question itself, and more importantly, I think that, when we take a look at what may be a best practice in other municipalities may not necessarily apply in ours. And I think the last point I wanted to share about this is the fact that, this is an ambitious, very expensive initiative for the municipality to consider. Again, we take a look at our aging infrastructure, which again, Mr. Koselleck has highlighted that in fact, part of a 10-year plan, we are looking at ways of supporting the necessary replacement of, water and sewer along that corridor that's spoken about. But it is also the impact that it's going to have in our community for the long term. And, for those of us, again, Councillor Sherwood, from a historic perspective, we take a look at the heritage buildings that we have in the downtown, and even those that may not necessarily be truly designated in the West End corridor. We do have some vibrancy and history that we don't want to lose, while at the same time embracing some new building concepts, new building designs, and also the impact of density, which is absolutely imperative in these times that we face in our community and also across this country. That's all I have, Deputy Mayor Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrews. Councillor McIntosh, you are up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I too have some concerns about congestion, both on the west and the east side, and I'll be very interested to see some more information on it. In regards to the west side, I think once Hanson Boulevard is open, I think some of the traffic flow will be a lot less on that end of Broadway, but we'll wait and see. Thank you.
Very good. I would just have one, not a question, just more of a comment on the evening and why we're here. First of all, I'm so grateful for the report. Thank you very much to both of you for being here. I look out into the audience that's here tonight and I think about what my day was. There's prominent business people in this room who are affected by what this would be. I took 2 phone calls today from people who own property on this corridor. People are concerned about what the future is going to look like. And I think we all are. And we want to do something thoughtful because we only get one chance at this. But I do know this. To leave it the way it is a disservice to the town of Orangeville. It is awful the way it looks when you come in off of Highway 10. And that is our postcard to the visitors that are coming to our community. There was a very successful business that operated for years. It was a mechanic's garage. I know the owner. He's a great individual. He sold that business. We're waiting for the development there to happen. It looks awful. It's not an indictment of that owner. We just cannot sit still. We have to go forward with something that makes sense and will be a bridge to, by the way, which is one of the nicest downtowns for a small town in Ontario. And you can't see it until you get up the darn hill. And I think some people will look at it and say, I don't want to go up that hill as they see it today. So I look forward to the change. When there was commentary on social media about this, I know people are concerned. But it's more concerning to stay put. and we cannot do that. So I thank you both for being here. I thank you for your report and to staff for the feedback. So at this point in time, we do have a motion on the floor, Council. If there's nothing else to share, all in favor of accepting the report as is? Okay, very good. That passes, and we're done. So thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate it. Okay, so at this point, Council, we will move on to the consent agenda. So the following items have been compiled under the consent agenda to facilitate a single vote for Council. Council may remove any item from the consent agenda. So at this time, we'll just go over what the agenda items are that have been removed. My understanding at this point in time is that we have pulled forward by Councillor McIntosh 13.1.5, which is the election sign bylaw. Councillor Andrews has pulled 13.1.7, which is transit. And Councillor Andrews has also pulled 13.1.11, which is the acoustic leak detection. Councillor, are there any other items at this time? No? Okay, very good. Seeing none. At this time, we will go to the motion first so that all consent agenda items for the current council meeting listed under 13.1 staff reports, 13.2 correspondence, and 13.3 committee board minutes be received or approved as presented, with the exception of the items removed for individual consideration. And again, those are 13.1.5, 13.1.7, and 13.11. Any discussion on the motion? No? All in favor of passing that? We need a mover and a seconder, excuse me. Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Stevens, thank you both for bailing me out. All in favor? Very good. Okay. So at this point in time, we will go in order. We'll go to 13.1.5, and that goes over to you, Councillor McIntosh. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've read the election sign bylaw, and I agree with everything that's on there. I just wanted what are the penalties? I didn't see any penalties on this particular report, so I just wonder if the clerk could just talk about the penalties for it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Chair Taylor. So yes, the penalties for the election sign bylaw will go through our administrative penalty systems, and any violation of the bylaw will incur a penalty notice, and the penalties are about $25, which basically is the cost for us to recoup sending out a bylaw officer to remove and hold the signs.
Very good. Councillor McIntosh, you're good. Any other further comments on this? Okay, we're going to do a motion each time, Madam Clerk. We'll do it, yep, okay. Any mover on this? Councillor McIntosh, Councillor Stevens, all in favor? Very good. Okay, so we will move on to 13.1.7, and that is for you, Councillor Andrews.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I wanted to make a comment, and again, I want to thank staff for this report. I also wanted to thank Mr. Luce for his response to some of the questions. And for those of you that are in the gallery or those of you that are watching, no doubt there's a lot of curiosity about this particular activity that we have. Our fare free transit continues to be used by our community. We did see some figures that highlighted the decrease in the ridership from 2024 to 2025. So that was a decrease of about 23.6, or about 58,000 riders. Even though this was the case, a question I do have for staff, and this is pertaining to operating expenses. Did they decrease or increase? And if they did increase, what were the attributing factors to that? So I guess this question would be either to Mr. Koselleck or through Mr. Koselleck.
Mr. Koselleck.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Through your worship, I guess for 2024, our operating costs were about $825,000. For 2025, the operating costs were about $770,000. So they're a little bit lower in the operating costs, partly due to the route changes. So it went from the 3 routes to the 2 routes. So that resulted in the third quarter being a little bit less for it. We did evaluate sort of the cost per rider also. So 2024, it was about $3.35 per rider. And that increased to, in 2024, or 2025, to about $4 per rider. So part of it is the reduction in the ridership, and the costs are similar between the years.
Thank you, Mr. Koselleck. And again, I appreciate staff providing me with this detail because the question was posed is what was the cost per rider, and thus it did go up. In these times, of course, of economic uncertainty and the cost for diesel fuel, I know that, and again, I was provided with an answer. I thought our buses were in fact using regular fuel, but they in fact are using diesel, and so diesel has had the biggest impact at the pumps, and so subsequently our costs are going to go up temporarily, we hope. But having said that, again, I think what we're looking at is the costs are across the board going to be affecting not only us as a municipality, but also residents and even businesses too. The other question I had was pertaining to ridership, and again, I think the comments were highlighted that part of it is the time of the year. We saw ridership reduced during the winter months, and we did have a harsh winter. And I think moving forward with the new buses that will be coming online, it will give us an opportunity to hopefully see some increased ridership. I guess the last point is to, again, remind our community of this wonderful benefit that they do have available. There are other municipalities that do not have it, and subsequently those that are using it hopefully will end up increasing ridership based on when the new buses arrive later in 2026.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. On that note, if I could, Council's quiet. Oh, you're in there now. This managing this queue thing is not my favorite. I'm going to rate myself a C- at best on this. Okay. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a brief discussion with Mr. Delis before our meeting started, and I know that our buses are larger, but I just would like to go over, I know part of the report was that we might be going back into Sobeys parking lot, and I'm just wondering if Mr. Deleuze or Mr. Koselleck would comment on whether we could go back into the mall, whether we could go back into Walmart. As chair of Access Orangeville, I get a lot of people reaching out and asking, it's a very long walk from the bus stop to these stores. And if you guys could comment, one or the other, or both, thank you.
Mr. Koselleck?
Yeah. Through your worship, it's difficult to go into those areas. I think some of them, like the Zayres, the town hasn't gone for 4 or 5 years. It's just a difficult access, even going into Metro. It can be a 5 or 10 minute delay if you go into those areas, just when you're caught up in traffic. So that's one of the big concerns residents had when we were asking people on the bus. They wanted a reliable bus. And it's one of those things, if it can get stuck in some of these areas for 10 minutes, it's difficult. One of the things we want to try and do is go into the Sobeys parking lot, not right to the front door, but close to it, where the access would come out. There's a side road going over to Riddell, so trying to have a stop in that area. So it would cut the distance down for half for people. And we're also trying to coordinate with them to see if we can have a shelter or that sort of thing in the area. So we're trying to look at some of the options to make it better, but we won't be able to go into all the facilities with the buses, unfortunately.
Good. Can we put Councillor Stevens back on for a sec?
So I'm learning too.
There we go. You're back.
Thank you. Thank you. Walmart parking lot seems really big, and I'm just not sure why we can't manage at least in through there. That's just my take, and that's a lot of the residents as well, so.
Mr. Koselleck?
Through your worship, we'll take a look at it again, but a lot of it was due to the delays. When they had gone in there, sometimes they'd be stuck, 5 or 10 minutes trying to get through traffic. When it's busy and congested, it can really cause delays, and that's one of the big reasons. Our routes only have about 5 minutes of spare time in it to make the route on time to get back to the hub. So if they're stuck in there for more than 5 minutes, then they miss the transfers, and it causes a lot of other operational issues. But we'll take another look at it, but it is a difficult thing to do, to come in those areas.
Good, Councillor Stevens? Very good. Councillor Andrews and I had a little discussion here, and you're going to come in here and kind of ask.
I am,
Yeah,
yes,
thank you.
Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. And this is more procedural than anything else. In the report, and this would be for Madam Clerk, It says, to address the concerns raised by the riders and other members of the public, and 3 options have been developed for council's future consideration. So option 1, 2, and 3. We are not voting on any of those options tonight. I just want to be clear on that.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is correct. It says that there's be any in-year service options be presented to council for approval in the future. So no decisions are being made at this meeting right now.
Just wanted to make sure that not only council is aware of that, but also the general public who may be viewing this or have read the council agenda. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. All good. I just had one, and it was kind of along the same lines, and of course, as always, you've beaten me to it, Councillor Andrews, but just the summary would be, like, to me, the way I would say this is the ridership is slightly down. There's some expenses on the horizon for it, but I believe we've made a commitment to a date in 2027 before we would review it. And this is just an update, and there's really no sense in carrying this forward at this point because we're going to do the final at that point. That's generally the gist of it, right? So we've got a year and a half to enjoy, and then we'll determine.
Through your worship, originally it was paused with the fare free transit, and we'll bring a report back by July of 2027 after the election, and just see if it's something we want to continue or if we want to try and change things. I guess as part of it, we were looking at options to address some of the concerns from the riders that were on it. So we wanted to be a high-level outline of the different options. We'll bring forward some recommendations through the budget process, but we also wanted to bring this forward if council said, nope, we want to do it now. We'll look at some different options. So we just wanted to have council informed, bring forward some options for it, and it can be discussed more at a later date.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Koselleck. No further comments or questions, Council? Okay. Motion, if I could. Councillor Stevens, Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? Very good. Okay. So we move on to item 13.111, which is the acoustic leak detection equipment and software. And Councillor Andrews, you are hopefully on here. You are.
I'm on. Thank you again through you, Deputy Mayor Taylor. This particular item really caught my interest, and I read this a number of times, and I do again want to thank the Infrastructure Services Department and our Manager of Water as well for responding back. And where this, just for the sake of council members and the general public, was the importance of this particular request, and I'm in favor of this request. And in fact, I'll be putting forth, obviously, my hand for a motion on this. But where it gets interesting is, in fact, on the figures of 2022 and the water loss. And the water loss was quite significant. Again, for my fellow members of council, if you did not dive into the numbers, it starts to get quite significant when you put it into simple perspectives of how many older swimming pools can be filled by the amount of water that has been lost over a period of time. And so the question was posed, in fact, how many older pools could be filled? And again, the importance of the leak detection, the acoustic leak detection equipment and the software upgrade is imperative. And I did not realize, the standardization that exists from municipality to municipality, and I guess it's quite acceptable to have a 10% loss of water, which in my opinion, as I've expressed at various times during this council term, water is a precious commodity. And as much as we do have, sources of our different wells, and we've invested in the new pool and well that's going to be hopefully coming online at some point, for us to be losing water, it's important to have the equipment to detect exactly where those leaks are. And in fact, the report does highlight how you were able to navigate through that and prevent significant water loss in 2024 and 2025. But just to put this into context, the older swimming pool, we're not talking about the play swimming pool, we're talking our stainless steel state-of-the-art swimming pool, has 666,000 liters. In 2022, the amount of water that we lost, we could have filled that pool 489 times based on the amount of water that was lost in our aging infrastructure. And again, when I found out this information, I absolutely applaud our team for being experts in this area, because I just looked at this and I went, wow. And how many other municipalities are also dealing with this issue of lost water in infrastructure. This is treated water that is coming to our households. This is not, in fact, going through the meters that we have. This is before it gets to us who, turn on our shower, turn on our taps, flush the toilet. And all I can say is, wow, I'm so glad that we have moved ahead, but, we can't look back, but that is a lot of water to be losing, and especially with our wells that we know are aging, and the impact on those wells. And we're doing our due diligence to make sure that these wells are being supported. We know that we've had a report or two that have highlighted our commitment financially. But again, I want to thank the professionalism and the specialization that our staff have to push this forward, because this is an absolute. This is an absolute piece of equipment that we need to make sure that we don't go down a path that we did 4 short years ago. And who's to say how much we lost even before that period of time? So I don't have any questions, but I really just wanted to make sure that we were aware of the impact of this particular device or the system that's in place. And as much as it is costing more to improve, I guess, the system itself, it's going to end up posing, it's going to improve our situation from a precious commodity that we sometimes take for granted.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Mr. Koslak, if you could share with your team that you have some admirers that get to sit in the front of the room, so thank you very much. I don't think you wanted any, it was just, yeah, very good. But thank you to you and your team, sir. Appreciate everything that you do. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our program here tonight. We're going to vote. I don't want to vote. Would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Andrews will do that. Councillor Sherwood, will you do that? All in favor? Very good. So that is the end of the program now. Notice of motion prior to meeting. We don't have any notices of motion. Is there any notices of motion at meeting tonight? No, I thought one of you for sure would say that you wanted me to continue running the meeting. No, nobody wants that. Okay, announcements. Any announcements this evening? Any announcements? I just have one very minor one, and that is, I'm going to steal from you, Councillor Sherwood, but I want everybody to know that I went to the latest rendition at Theatre Orangeville on last Saturday night. It might be, I've seen most of the plays. It might be the best play I've ever seen there. I typically tell everybody how good they are, but I just want everybody to know it might be the best play I've ever seen. So I encourage everybody who's watching and anybody in the room here to please consider going and supporting the theater. It's worth your time. It was excellent. Murder at Ackerton Manor. I knew it was a murder, but I couldn't tell you what manor we were at. Yeah. Till the end of the month, March 29th. Okay, thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Bylaws. So at this point in time, we'll have a mover and a seconder. I'll read it first. That all bylaws for the current council meeting listed under item 17, bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed, subject to S284.11 of the Municipal Act. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Stevens, thank you. Any discussions on that? No? All in favor of that? Very good. Motion carried. And if I could have a motion to adjourn, and I've always wanted to ask you, Councillor McIntosh, to do that. And if I could have a seconder, Councillor Stevens. All in favor? Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. It's all